My name is John Tatum. I'm a recent graduate of Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. I've received my bachelor's and master's in history. I'm looking here to be hired on for this adjunct history position you have here. And once I get on, my overall goal is to show you that I am a dedicated employee and that I have a lot to offer you, and hopefully secure myself a full-time position here on this campus. For one thing, I do have a bit of experience working with history courses, and I have proven myself to be very dedicated and successful in my work. I've worked for the past several years as a supplemental instruction leader. As the supplemental instruction leader, I've been responsible for creating sessions and activities to help students learn outside of the classroom, to help what they're learning in class make more sense to them. I like to help take big concepts and break them down into smaller pieces, so then help them find ways to build them together. In writing lesson plans for my sessions, I always try to write lessons that cater to a variety of learning styles. I do like to use a lot of demonstrations, graphs, charts, matrices, things of that nature, but rather than just drawing them up or printing them and showing them to the students, I get the students to help me create them. I like to get very hands-on. I invite the students one by one up to the board to help me draw out this chart. Now, I will try to have a drawn-out copy for my own reference of what I want them to create in the long run. And what I'm doing is asking a bunch of probing questions and having them answer these questions and help each other in creating this chart. So the students are actually learning how to do these things for themselves. That there is what I would say sets me apart from other prospective employees. Is several people may be passionate about the subject. Some people may have a bit more knowledge or even a bit more writing and research than I do. But my overall history and teaching philosophy is to help students help themselves. I want to help students develop skills that they can carry on to future classes and throughout their lifetimes when I'm no longer there to help them. If I just feed them a bunch of information that I learned from all my great research, that may help them in the short term in passing my exams, but when they get to the next class, it may not be so helpful. Whereas if I teach them how to take information and break it down and make sense of it all, that can be very beneficial to them much further on down the road. I have done a bit of research on this college, and what fascinates me the most is the history of the college. I see it was built back in 1965 on land that was donated by Fort Hood. I would really like to be more familiar with this area. I'd like to have an opportunity to get to know some of the residents of the area and just to hear firsthand what it is that is so significant about this region to U.S. and Texas history. I know there was a great deal of history that played out within this region, and it's still being carried out in this region to this day. Furthermore, the university I have been attending and working at, which is Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, is right down the road from a military base. We at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi have a large portion of our student body which are veterans and active service members. I see that that's the same case here at this university. That's something I really like having in the classroom, especially in history classes. Service members and veterans have a whole other perspective sometimes and have a lot more input that us as civilians would never even really consider in depth without hearing it firsthand. So I would very much like to be ingrained with the community of this region. My highest achievement I have received throughout my career is the feedback that I receive from students, my supervisor, as well as my coworkers. Every semester as an SI leader, I am evaluated first by my coworkers I'll have one of the senior coworkers will show up to one of my sessions. I don't know when they're coming. They just show up, and they make an evaluation, a written evaluation of how I handle myself in the session, and what kind of activities I have planned, how I get the students involved within the learning process. From there, I start giving out anonymous surveys to the students towards the end of the semester, have them evaluate how I'm doing. I ask them questions such as, how often have you been attending my sessions? How helpful have you felt that they've been to you? Would you be likely to recommend me as an SI leader to other students? From that point, I have student feedback and feedback from my coworkers. That all gets taken into consideration by my supervisor, who receives both of those. And then I have to go sit down with her at the very end of the semester, and we have a one-on-one consultation where she gives me personal feedback and gives me a review of how I've done throughout the semester. And every semester so far, in all three of those categories, I have received top marks. Everybody seems to be very pleased with the fact that I'm dedicated to helping students help themselves. They all see that I am very passionate about what I do, and that I'm very dedicated to my job. That's another thing there. No matter what's going on, I make sure that I can be reliable to my students and to my supervisor. If something comes up, I have a doctor's appointment or a family emergency, I not only stay in close communication to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on, I make sure to make that up. I'll set up an extra session either that week or the next week so the students have another opportunity to come to me. And I know that they all greatly appreciate that. My absolute highest achievement, I would have to say, is the thank yous I get from students. I'll have students come to me in the hallways of school or even on the bus. I've even seen a couple in stores, and they just feel the need to thank me for being there for them and for offering them the support that I have. There's one student in particular, it just chokes me up thinking about her, sent me this beautiful email at the end of the semester. She was passionate about photography. That's what she liked to do, and she took all these nice pictures from around her campus and made me a very nice thank you card and thanked me for helping her develop skills that she knew would be helpful to her throughout her college career. I remember she came in very nervous and uncomfortable with the course content, and she ended up walking away with a high A. And when I received that thank you card, I knew I was doing things right, and it just felt so good. I haven't been in too many conflicts in the workplace. I try to avoid that at all costs. I try to see where the problem is stemming from and what can be done to resolve the problem before it breaks into a conflict. One particular issue comes to mind from my very first job, which was at the paint department in Home Depot. I had a coworker who had actually not been working there as long as me, but she was convinced that she knew everything about the store. Excuse me. She knew all the ins and outs, all the products, how everything worked there, and she, which was fine. But what was bothering me is there was starting to be an issue where I would be talking with a customer, trying to identify what the customer needed and to help solve their problems, and she would chip in and kind of eavesdrop and start giving her 2 cents and interrupt what I was saying to the customer. And it, in a way, undermined me. It made me look like I wasn't confident enough to handle myself with the customer. It made it look like perhaps I wasn't knowledgeable enough about our products and services to help the customer, and that I needed her to chip in, when that was not the case at all. She was just chiming in without me even asking. This happened a few times. I just kind of waited to see if it was maybe once or twice thing, but it consistently started happening. So I waited till one day at a time when the rush had passed, and it was just the 2 of us there in the department. And I said, "Hey Cindy, could you come over here with me real quick? Help me cut this box or move something." I found a task that I could get her to help me with. And completing that task together, we were dependent on one another. And I used that opportunity to say, "Hey Cindy, look, this is something I've noticed. It makes me a little uncomfortable. it seems like it makes the customers take me less seriously, and it breaks down the rapport of our entire department. It affects you, and it affects me, and it affects our store as a whole. And it's something I think we could work on. I really do appreciate you trying to offer me your advice. If you have any advice you'd like to offer me, please do. I'm really glad to have you here as a resource. But when I'm talking with a customer, I need you to respect the fact that I am trying to direct this person with the knowledge that I have to offer, and I need them to be able to know that they can depend on me without having somebody else interrupt what I'm saying. And by handling it in that way, by not calling her out in front of anybody, by making it a very private matter, and letting her know that I do appreciate her input, she was very willing to respect that. And once I brought it to her attention, I never really had that issue again. One thing I'm really working on is getting a bit of research under my belts. As a recent college graduate, I haven't had many opportunities to do very extensive research. I did, during my capstone course, get to do a bit of research on Sam Houston. I focused a little more on his relationship with American Indians, Native Americans, and how that affected his life and how that affected the lives of the tribes that he interacted with. I'd like to do a bit more research on Houston and how he got mixed up in the Texas history here, more particularly in his role in the Revolution. He was the big commander of the Texian army who defeated Santa Anna. Furthermore, I like to dive into the Mexican perspective of the Texas Revolution. I'm currently looking through this series of sources here. This is the Mexican side of the Texas Revolution. This has a bunch of documents from General Santa Anna and from Urrea and other officers from Mexico who were fighting the Texian rebels. I'm also looking into this here. This is a secondary source by Paul Calor. Discusses obviously the Texas Revolution, how that feeds into the U.S.-Mexican War. But this has also at the beginning a very good section on the Mexican War for Independence, which I think is so fascinating. It is just it spells out what a revolution is, essentially. You have the underdogs fighting against the higher class. So you have the Spanish Peninsulares who are getting all of society's kickbacks. And some of the criollos, their children, are saying, hey, what about us? And then they start getting the mestizos and some of the indios on their side and helping them rise up for their cause. And it really starts out as a true beautiful cause of the underdogs trying to get a little representation. And then when you have crazy characters such as Agustin Iturbide and Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna getting mixed into the picture, trying to find, okay, which side's going to win? Which side do I get on? The whole thing starts to complicate. The story really changes. And I see that that's a theme which occurs throughout history. It's been seen in Texas, in the United States, and all around the world. And I'm not sure what my thesis is going to be here quite yet, but I'm not letting that stop me from diving into the research and taking a lot of notes so that when bang, that light bulb goes off and I know what my historical argument's going to be, I can start putting it down on paper so that I can eventually get some monographs published and help others study. I'm very open to negotiate salary. I've worked very hard to get to where I am, but I understand that I am just getting my foot in the door. I understand the average starting pay for adjuncts is somewhere around $20,000, $25,000. Hopefully something around there would be a good starting pay. I am very open to negotiation though. Like I said, my overall plan here is to get my foot in the door and show you what a great resource I am to your campus, and from there work on securing a full-time permanent position. I would prefer a job where there is some structure. There's a basic outline of expectations that kind of set fundamentals, set a backbone for what we're doing there. So I know when I come to work every day, more or less what's expected of me. But I also like to have a bit of free reign to get creative and to find how to best work things for myself and for everyone else involved in my workplace, which in this case would be the students. I like jobs that are challenging, that push me to learn more constantly. And I see working as a professor in a college classroom as meeting all that criteria. There's the structure set by the college itself and by the state of Texas of what's expected of me. But I'm still free to write my own lesson plans, to incorporate my own lessons, to I have a bit of say over what kind of sources we're going to be studying and how we're going to contribute that to the overall course content. I also see a constant challenge. You know, there's always different sorts of students coming in. We have technology constantly advancing. That's an issue I've been working at tackling within my SI sessions. It's been fun finding a balance of, hey, how can we use this to help us? You know, I can pull up Kahoot games and Jeopardy games and things like that. But at the same time, I need to, I'm challenged to lay down the law and say, hey, you're not allowed to take pictures in this session of anything unless I give you permission. That's to make sure that everybody's putting in their fair share of work and that everybody's actually getting something out of it. So it is constantly challenging, but it's for the best. It's for a very positive outcome. And this is the ideal workplace, the ideal work environment, to answer your question, would be a college classroom.